HR nerds, this is Nicole Dessain. Welcome to Talent Tales, the show where I interview leaders who have brought design thinking to their talent and HR practices. In today's episode, we have a special guest on the show. I'm joined by Maike Kueper, who is an Agile coach for cultural development at Dr. Oetker in Germany. Welcome, Maike.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So, Maike, what's your story?
My story, where do I start? So maybe one thing that is a bit particular when I look at most other Agile coaches I know, I'm a humanities person by training. So I actually studied intercultural HR development and communications. And I think that was really important for the perspective I have on cultural development and organizational development. And maybe also explains why I got into design thinking and really liked it. The thing that paved my way to design thinking was a research grad job that I had at university. I worked at a Fraunhofer Research Institute, which you might know or not. And there were all these physicists and engineers who knew a lot of stuff that I didn't. And we did a lot of experiments basically and tried to find some new product. They were very into applied sciences, so very industry near, let's say. And there I got really into the method because I really liked how fast, how dynamic it was. And it was really funny to see how these physicists who never thought about a user in their life before got into this kind of thinking of looking more from the human perspective that was really new to them. And it was a really, really cool learning experience. Yeah, and then I went into consulting after university and did a lot of, let's say, applied design thinking in terms of HR projects mostly. So all the stuff that has to do with how we call it in Germany, at least new work, right? So how does the organization of the future look like, not just HR wise, but in general. And after 4 years, I decided to dig a bit deeper and go into a company where I'm not working with 10 clients, but just one basically. And now part of a small team for cultural development, which is a lot of fun.
Yeah, so interesting. So I'm also a liberal arts major. And I think, sometimes that broad, initial education sort of helps staying curious about, other disciplines and how they might get integrated in what we do. I find that sort of interesting myself. And then it's sort of interesting, the path, everybody has sort of a time when they discover design thinking and they still can recall it and kind of the impact it had on them. So that's kind of interesting. And then can you maybe just briefly explain, so I know everybody in Germany knows Dr. Oetker, but I don't think it's that well known outside of Germany. What do you guys do?
Basically, as you can see in the picture, mm-hmm. We produce a lot of food that people normally like. So it really depends on the companies. Like the major brand is a bit different. So in Germany, we're all about pizza and pudding. That's like the best sellers, let's say. We also have a lot of baking products, especially for decorating and stuff, and baking mixes. I would really be curious to hear from you what we are known for in the US, if we are known at all. But there's definitely frozen pizza and baking mixes that are on the market there.
I have to say I have not come across it here, but maybe I haven't looked for it. So whenever I go to Germany, I actually import some things that I can't find here. So, but maybe others have seen it. Maybe it has a slightly different brand here. I'm not sure. But I also wanted to follow up on one other term that you used, because we're going to talk about some terms like agile design thinking, but you mentioned another term, new work, and that is indeed not used here in the US that much. We talk about the future of work, which is also a misnomer, really, because what we're talking about is really different ways of looking at our employees and how work gets done today. So I think both terms are sort of, I'm not in love with either, to be honest. Can you share a little bit your thoughts about it and how it's used in Germany?
That's actually funny because like 3 to 4 years ago, when I started in the field, and the field was still kind of new and growing, it used to be more future of work here too. And I really have no idea why it changed. I think there were 2, 3 big consultancies and maybe big companies who then called their initiatives in this area new work. And then it kind of caught on.
Hmm.
That's the only explanation that I can see. Um, I totally agree with you. It's still it's a super buzzword, right? It doesn't mean anything. Basically, it just means work that is kind of hopefully different than what we're doing right now. So
Mm-hmm.
a bit that's like the promise I think behind the term.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's an amalgamation of so many different things. So it really depends. What I really hate is actually a lot of furniture, big furniture companies in Germany use a lot for when they talk about like fancy spaces, right? So
Mm-hmm.
colorful desks and no walls anymore. And
Mm-hmm.
then they call that new work. Um, and and other people call design thinking and agile new work. So it's really everything and nothing,
Mm-hmm. So that means also we can make it up. And in my view,
basically.
I would love for it to be this human-centered view of that we also view our employees as humans, and focus on, how can we make work better for everybody. So that's my definition. I stick with it. Okay. But so what's your superpower? Tell us a little
Oh
bit.
yeah,
And I know you
let
prepared
me
something.
check my post-its here. So I don't know if this is recognizable.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think the first thing that came to my mind was I'm a very happy curator, let's say. So I read a lot. I'm on social media a lot. I'm very much a fan of evidence-based approaches because I
Mm-hmm.
think I don't know how it's with you guys, but in Germany, in HR, there's a lot of very old school HR guys who have been doing HR for 25 years, who have been doing performance management the same way for 25 years, like they learned it at university. Um, and a lot of stuff is really, if you do like a half-hour research on it, you see that there's better practice, and that is really annoying to me. So what I do is I read a lot, I share a lot of information, I try to talk to a lot of people. I'm super curious, so I try to learn stuff every day and share it in one way or another.
So what's one of the things that you learn, like that we all should know
Oof.
about from an evidence-based perspective that you would recommend?
Um, yeah, that would probably be performance management, which is really like
Mm.
it's my number one hate topic in
Yep.
terms of HR,
Mm-hmm.
because I think it was for me in my old role, it was my reason for quitting consulting,
Hmm.
because these external drivers in terms of you get this kind of bonus, you have variable bonuses, and the managers have like 30% of their salary is basically based on what they're selling. Um, and I think it's super hurtful in many, many ways in terms of organization, because it creates a lot of competition. There is no, it suppresses for those who are intrinsically motivated, it suppresses the intrinsic motivation. There is research on that a lot. Um, and it creates a lot of stuff that you don't really want. It creates a lot of effects that people don't think about.
Hmm.
And of course, I mean the picture of human motivation that lies behind it is this theory X thing, right? People are
Yep.
only going to work if they put the carrot in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just not my view. And I really hope we can abolish that practice someday.
Yay, I'm all for it. Can we do succession planning next?
Yeah.
That's another one that I think we put in place a process. It's not human-centered, and it also has a lot of unintended consequences, I think. It's also doesn't tend to, at least here in the US, foster a lot of diversity, you know. So it doesn't really help with promotions of diverse talent and things like that. So okay, so let's jump into design thinking and agile. You told us a little bit how you discovered design thinking, but before we jump into the how, if you can just define for us a little bit, how would you define design thinking and agile? Are they similar? What are they? How do you use them?
Yeah, that's a really tough question. So design thinking for me really is not so much the process or the tools, but really the mindset. So
Mm-hmm.
this whole thing of looking at, first of all, looking at problems and not looking for solutions. I'm not starting with solutions, first of all. but really looking at situations, looking at statuses, and seeing what's going on here. What kind of, let's say, symptoms do I perceive? What do people say? And only then after you really take some time to get all that in and kind of do your hypotheses or interpretations, only then to come up with ideas what you can actually do.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course the whole iterative thing, which is where I think design thinking and agile are very close. To start small, to see okay, let's try out the first solution, let's see if that works. If it doesn't, we'll kill it and try the next. I think that's where design thinking and agile go together very well in terms of mindset. In terms of agility, what I really don't like is if you're very, very dogmatic. So that's a big problem, I think, also in Germany, also driven by a lot of IT people who come from really the strong regulation of Scrum, of SAFe, of all these frameworks. So in our team, we always see that it's hugely important to use all these, be it the mindset part or be it a tool part, right? So be it retrospectives or in generally to do things iteratively, to use those when you need them and apply them to the context that you have. And we never try to say let's use design thinking for this, let's use Scrum for your team because we think it's the good solution. We really pick a mix, let's say. I used to be more dogmatic about design thinking in the past because I saw a lot of failed ideas to use design thinking. And I moved away, let's say, from really doing strict design thinking processes because I didn't really see that work very often. And in really big contexts where they really put a lot of money and effort and research into it, it worked really well, especially for product development. But in the context that I use it in organizational development, let's say, it's really more the mindset thing of looking at the people, looking at the context, looking at the problem, and then trying out some stuff.
Yeah, so let's dive in a little bit more. So you apply it in the context of culture development, organizational development. How does that look like?
So a big part of what we do is team development, right? So we work with the departments and teams, basically on the question, how can you work better? And what this work better means is, of course, super individual, super specific. So for some teams, it's really your meetings are terrible and you have too many of them. So what's the problem? What can we do about it? Is there just no structure, which is often a problem? Is there a lot of communication that should be asynchronous, should be on Microsoft Teams or wherever, or should just not happen at all? Or could have been an email, right? So really basic questions are still not good in a lot of departments. And we always go in with this mindset of, okay, as I just described, right? Go into it, look at the problem, see what kind of interpretations you have from the symptoms that you see, and then try to iterate to what's a better solution. I mean, the meeting thing is a really small example, but also in terms of bigger projects, like what could you do better? Or in terms of new strategies for a department, how can you get from what you have now to a better piece? That's like one part. And then, of course, with Agile, it's really, then that's more concrete then, right? Installing Kanban boards or helping the team to find flow and prioritize. Prioritization is a huge topic. It's always a problem. Nobody's good at it. It can always be better, even if you're already good at it. And I think this, we all share, us and our team, we all share this human-centered mindset in terms of we try to help you, right? We're not like typically in HR, maybe we're not a change project where we say this is the world of new work that we now move you all towards to. But we say, let's look at your problem, let's see how we can help. And then, but it's still your responsibility to move a bit, right? I don't know if that's necessarily design thinking mindset. Maybe that's more systemic in terms of we believe the solution is somewhere in you, and we just help you to follow it. But I think this whole human-centered and more iterative thing is the antidote to classical change management.
And then I noticed, first of all, in your background, you have this nice hashtag move and the slice of change. I love that already, that you have sort of your own branding for your team. And then I also saw, I think you posted a LinkedIn post where you sort of shared the design principles or the principles of, your team. And one thing was, that I remember, one was, user centricity, and one was iterative. So I thought, a lot of these principles, maybe you can speak to these principles a little bit more, and how you would think they connect to the design thinking or agile mindset.
Yeah. I think we really, the principles were not like principles are often done. We didn't write them down when we started and then try to follow them. It was really more of an observation of ourselves, where we said after a year, if we had to write down how we work, this is it.
Mm-hmm.
And as you said, iteration, that is hugely important to us because we are still a bit new. So we were founded 1.5 years ago as a team. So like before, there was not really any kind of organizational development officially at Dr. Oetker. So it's new. There was HR, there was HR development, but there was really more on the individual training basis. So like very standard training stuff. So we had to start from scratch basically, and we are 4 people, quite diverse backgrounds, which is really helpful. So really there was nothing to do but to work iteratively, right? To try out things and see what works. And that is also a culture change in itself for a company like Dr. Oetker, because I don't know if you know this, but in Germany, one of our slogans is quality is the best recipe, because we always I don't think there has been a scandal in 129 years of Dr. history. So it's hugely important to the company to sell products that are basically that everybody can do. So if maybe an anecdote, we have a testing kitchen with I think like 100 different ovens where they try all the cake mixes in all the ovens. So they can make sure whatever oven you have, it's going to be the same result. So, right, that's the mentality that we have in the company. And of course, then iterative work is totally new, and it's not precision, and it's not 100% safe and 100% quality from day one.
Yeah.
So again, in itself, the way we do it is culture change for the company. And that is very important to us, that we live the claims that we say this is new work.
Interesting. Yeah, and just a reminder to everybody, please put your questions for Maike in the chat and we'll get to them in just a little bit. I'm just curious, what were barriers that you encountered when you tried to bring in human-centered design into the organization, and how did you overcome them?
I actually have, compared to other new work projects or organizational development departments that I know, we're still pretty fine in terms of barriers. We don't have many adversaries, let's say, because I think it's because of the human-centered approach, because we're not trying to push any kind of method or solutions on the people. And I think this is super helpful for us because we're not the bad guys, right? We're never the bad guys. We always come and say, what's your problem? Let's help you. And we put the responsibility on the other side, meaning we don't push ourselves on anyone in general.
Right.
So there are a lot of departments that we don't work with yet, because they haven't come to us. And I think this also really, really helps, that we let the user basically come to us, because the first step of the user is to realize I might have a problem here, or I might have an improvement possibility. And then they come to us and then we help.
And that's actually a good segue to my next question, because maybe have you seen like an increase of the departments that come to you? Because my next question is sort of about the impact. What impact have you noticed after introducing a human-centered approach?
Yeah, we definitely have more departments asking to work with us than we can manage.
Okay, so that's impact.
Right, so that's a good sign. But I think that's also it's different in the Dr. Oetker company than in other companies that I've worked for. So when I was a consultant, I was mostly in the DAX companies, in the bigger ones, so like the Fortune 500. And there it's a bit different because, of course, the planning horizon, let's say, is a very, very short term, because they have shareholder meetings every quarter, and they they do have a lot more of these hype cycles, let's say. And Dr. Oetker is a family-owned company, a bit more in the provincial area of Germany. So it's very much more long-term perspective. And that really, really helps because a lot of people really care about this company. They have been working, or their parents have been working here. And they really want the best for the company. So if they see that there is reasons for change, they will go along with it. There are not many like managers where this is just a stepping stone in their career. So I think this is, for me, that was also a bit why I picked this company, a family company, because you have the opportunity to do some stuff and you're not asked every 6 months for a report on cultural development, because they know it's a long-term investment.
So it seems the culture matters.
Yes.
In where you operate with design thinking.
I think if you have a more human-centered culture in general,
right,
that helps a lot.
Any other impacts that you've seen? So it seems like increase in requests from departments. Any other? Do you measure at all? Because I get that question a lot. How do you measure design thinking? And, I do a lot of research too. And I think there was a study out from McKinsey a couple of years ago, the business value of design. But other than that, it seems elusive. How do you handle that?
Yeah, I mean, what we do when we work in team development is we do kind of a self-evaluation in terms of, we call it culture analysis. It's not a culture analysis. It's really a self-evaluation along a few categories that we set in terms of what could new work mean. And then we do that at the beginning and the end. So that helps a bit with seeing for the teams, but also for us, where do departments put a focus and where do they change and where they're not. But for me, really, the impact is more in the smaller things, right? So when I see that most of the departments that we've worked with are now doing more focused meetings. They have an agenda. They measure return on time invested after meetings. They try to communicate a bit more consciously, let's say. And there are a lot of small tools, let's say, that we see in that we see popping up in different parts of the company because we told somebody about it. So I think it's really nice because then it shows that it's also sustainable, right? When we're no longer there, but the methods or the solutions are still there. That's my biggest achievement, I would say.
Yeah, love that. What's your favorite design thinking resource or hack?
Oh, it's really difficult to answer because I'm not using it so much in terms of the strict framework anymore.
Well, it could be a mindset too.
Yeah. For me, it's really this change of perspective, which I think is also part of me because of my humanities background. So one discussion that we always had at university was basically, what's your perspective on this? What's yours? And we never finished and say, this is right and this is wrong, right? So if you talk about intercultural conflict, for example, it's never black or white. So, and I think this is really helpful if you look at, especially if you look at dealing with problematic colleagues where you say, oh my God, he's never going to move. But then to change perspective, put yourself in the shoes of the customer and say, what kind of pains does he have? How could we alleviate those without making him too scared of other things? I think that's hugely important for this kind of job to think about where the user is coming from. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that can be a hack, right? Just what's the core mindset that you go in? And in summary, it seems like for those who want to get started with bringing human-centered design to their people practices, what I was hearing from you was don't talk about it.
Exactly,
design thinking. Start with the business problem or start with the problem that the business has, and then just apply some mindsets and maybe methods or not to it and go from there. Is that correct?
Yeah, definitely. One thing just came to my mind that I really, really love. I don't know it from design thinking. I know it from another kind of training. Is so-called safe enough to try. I don't know if you've ever heard it as a term. We use it as a decision principle, actually. It is a prototyping mindset, and we use it as a decision principle when people discuss which way do you want to go. And we don't ask, is there any anybody else who sees a problem with this? Is there still something speaking against it? But we ask, is this small enough of a risk that we can say, hey, it's safe enough to try? And then we
Interesting.
just do it. And that you can take 20 decisions in 20 minutes if you apply this, because there's almost never a really, really big risk.
Love it.
And that's one thing that is really now quite quickly being spread through the organization as a decision principle.
So I always end with a surprise quote and let you react to it. Are you ready?
Yep.
Okay, quote, "Design thinking is a mindset, not a toolkit or series of steps," unquote. Arne von Oosterom.
Yeah, I know him, funnily enough. Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I would never say it's the one thing and not the other. I know a lot of people who do quite well with using more of the process, but especially applying it in a context where it doesn't come from, let's say, I completely agree. As long as you understood the mindset, it's more important to have the mindset, not the process, than the other way around.
Yeah,
Let's put it like
agree.
that.
All right, let's jump into some questions. So Tamara is asking, how can we in training and development bring more of a human-centered approach to training and development?
So what we try to do with, so I am a bit, in our team, I'm a bit the liaison to the HR people, because I do come from an HR background. What I had them started to do basically is to ask a lot more than to just put answers in front of their faces, because I don't know how it's in your company, but in my company, still at the moment, it's very much we book a training calendar, we plan it a year in advance, and then there you have it, right? Use it or don't. So what they're doing now is they do a bit more surveys. They ask some questions, especially with leaders, but also others, and ask, okay, what's currently going on in your heads, right? What issues are you dealing with? So they're not trying to ask what kind of trainings do you want to buy next year, but they're asking a bit more into the context, and then trying to figure out, okay, what kind of solutions, trainings could we give them for this? So that's in terms of training. Let me read your question again.
Yeah, I think that answers that. We got one more that I want to hit before our time is out. And I think that Niels was asking that, and I think it related to what you said about performance management earlier. So he was asking, is there any way to make variable compensation effective?
That's a really good question. I mean, I'm not a comp and ben expert at all, thankfully. It's, I don't know, actually. I think probably yes. I think it really, really depends on the context of the company. For example, my partner, he works in a company, it's a consultancy as well. They have a very, very nice culture, very familiar, but very sales focused, let's say. It's a consultancy as well. And they have really tough bonuses and variable salaries, and it works just fine for them. I would hate it, and I think it really depends on the people that you use it on. There are a lot of people. I remember when in my old consulting job, they actually were very modern, in my opinion, for big consultancies, and they killed bonuses for the juniors and said, okay, you all get, it's all company success, right? So if we have 120% company success, everybody gets a 120% salary. I was like, finally, we get something that is collective, right? That motivates people to work on the same goal together. And 70% of my young colleagues hated it, because they were like, now if I'm the best, I'm not getting the most money. Right? So it's really a question of what kind of people do you want to use. So maybe a lot of people say in sales, for example, it only works with this kind of kind of salary. But then again, I would say it depends on the salespeople that you have or want to have.
Yeah, it's so interesting because you have different personalities. As you said, people are differently motivated. And then also that topic of unintended consequences, right? What are you rewarding and what might be the consequences from that? Yeah, that's certainly we could do a whole workshop on that probably, right? Whole design thinking workshop. So we are at the end of our time, and thank you so much coming here all the way from Germany, and thanks everybody, and I hope to see you all at a future Talent Tales. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.